continuar con parte de las presentaciones tan importantes que se tienen para esta tarde. And now the Specialty Coffee Association CEO, now is its time, Mr. Yannis Apostolopoulos, will present a global look at specialty coffee statistics and trends, focusing on the impact of COVID and the economic conditions on the specialty coffee market, as well as a look into the diverse, thriving future of specialty coffees. Yannis will also explore the new coffee value assessment and how it is adapted to the rapidly changing world of specialty coffee. Mr. Yannis, bienvenido. Muchísimas gracias por estar con nosotros.
Hello. Hello, everyone. I know it's after lunch, so I'm gonna try to be as fast as I can. When Noelle asked me to speak about specialty coffee trends, I said, okay, that's very interesting, but we need to start with the basics. And the basics is what is specialty coffee. We're the Specialty Coffee Association. And our purpose is to foster global coffee communities and support activities to make coffee more sustainable, equitable, and thriving as an endeavor. And as we call it in 3 words, try to make coffee better. So let's go to the main question. What is specialty coffee? And there was no definition about specialty coffee for many, many years. People were saying, oh, it's higher quality coffees or coffees that taste different. So in 2021, we issued a white paper, which is called Towards a Definition of Specialty Coffee. And what we try to say is that specialty coffee is a coffee or a coffee experience, and because of its distinctive attributes, it results to a higher value in the marketplace. And we talk about value in the bigger context. It's not price, it's value. And when we talk about attributes, in a coffee, we find a lot of attributes. We find intrinsic and extrinsic attributes to the coffee, like the physical appearance, the variety, the certifications, everything that is in the coffee, the flavor of coffee, or everything that is outside the coffee. Who is the producer? What was the process? So things that we all value in coffee and results on how much we appreciate that coffee. So if we think of it as a continuum, the more we know about something, the more we value it. And that is specialty. The less we know, it's commodity. And we have given this example again and again. If I'm trying to sell you a car, and I'm selling you a car, you cannot put a value on it. It's like a commodity. The more you know, what is the year, the model, how many kilometers, what's the extras, you get to understand more about something. So more attributes means more quality. And there is no clear line between one or the other. So again, the fewer attributes we know, it's less value. The more we know, it's higher value. So if we understand a coffee or a coffee experience attributes, then we can understand its value. That's the concept. I want to come back later to this one, but that can help us frame the conversation of what I'm going to present to you. And I want to talk a bit about statistics. And I'm going to use a lot of Euromonitor statistics, and Matt is here. He's going to be presenting tomorrow about a lot of statistics, but I want to use those statistics as a base of conversation. I'm going to talk about trends, what we have seen in the marketplace recently, and then I'm going to talk about the coffee value assessment and how this all comes together. So what does statistics tell us? First of all, overall, the coffee sales are growing. The coffee sales were not affected by the pandemic, and generally, even though we see some slowdown in economies, coffee sales around the world are keeping up. If we try to look at fresh coffee beans, that's the best proxy we can have to specialty coffee, because specialty coffee usually is traded in whole fresh beans. seems to be increasing better than the whole market. So the category is increasing. Actually, Euromonitor projects a steady growth over the next 5 years on their forecast for retail value for coffee. So, overall impressions is that the coffee growth is healthy, the coffee consumption is influenced by economic conditions, but it's not, we don't see a lot of fluctuation. And we see that specialty coffee, if we use the fresh whole beans as a proxy, is growing faster than the market. Now, if we see the other side, which is the retail side, the specialty coffee shops. And specialty coffee shops, we consider shops that they make most of their revenue by selling coffee and or tea. We see that the specialty coffee shops, they had a dip during the pandemic, but they're recovering very fast. There were markets, major markets like Korea, that we didn't see that big dip during the pandemic, and that they not only recovering, they are performing really well. But markets, major markets like Germany, that they did have a huge effect during the pandemic, and they have not recovered even today to the previous levels that used to be. The US, it's pretty much as the total, but in general, as you can see, the trend is upwards around the world today. We don't know what it's going to be tomorrow, and if I could forecast tomorrow, I wouldn't be sitting talking to you today. Now, let's talk about specialty coffee trends. And if we can summarize specialty coffee trends, we see two things. We see flavor and diversity. And I'm going to talk, first of all, about beverage trends. We know that we started from the classic specialty. Then we had the mass appeal and popular growth with experimentations in beverages. And when the third wave came in, or super specialty, we saw new drinks coming up. So what is really interesting, there is a lot of flavor diversity. And you might see this picture and say, what is this? This is a lavender cafe latte. And it's not randomly there. This is the drink that had the most growth in the US, in Europe, in 2024. And it's a good representation of trends towards flavor diversity. What we have also noticed is that here is a lot of new flavors, and those are the top 10 flavor trends that we saw in coffee in 2024. Those are non-traditional ingredients, and many of those come from distinctive cultures, and they have a huge influence from Japanese culture and flavors. You're going to see words here that sometimes you think, oh, it doesn't fit with coffee. But it shows how the consumer is open to try and taste new things. On the other hand, we have the coffee beans trend. And we know that we started with the dark chocolate and sweet notes, like and the level of roast, if it's medium or dark. Then as we moved into the third wave, we heard about floral and tasting notes. But what we see that is happening more often is that we see people start talking about processing. You can see packaging all over the world that now focuses on communicating to consumers what's the processing. And it's a very, very complicated landscape. You have all these processes that consumers find very difficult to understand. But keep in mind, this is something which is very, very similar to wine. We've seen it in the wine industry in the past, and it's something that the consumer got used to it. Interestingly enough, we see also on the producing side different kind of things like co-fermented coffees. And this is a picture of like coffee being co-fermented with pineapple. And I know this is a very sensitive topic for a lot of people in many different rooms, but it doesn't mean that it's not happening. It's part of an innovation that is happening around us, and it's in our industry, and we need to be aware and embrace what is happening so that we can see how we can provide a better experience to consumers. And finally, we have genetic diversity. I'm pretty much sure that you have seen what is happening around the world and the coffee varieties that exist and how this also goes to the consumer level. Those are packaging communicating diversity in species, and we have like Eugenoides and Robusta on this one. And finally, and what is really important, is cultural interpretation of specialty, and it can be based on geographies. We've seen, like, from Italian roast, we went to the Latino movement in coffee shops in the US. We've seen Vietnamese coffee being marketed heavily by Nguyen Coffee. It's a wonderful world that is pushing diversity into coffee. So if you have all this in mind, we talk about not just attributes that are related to flavor, we talked about extrinsic attributes to coffee, that is processing, that might affect flavor, that is like packaging, that is certification. And that's why we came back to the definition of specialty coffee, and we said, okay, so we say that specialty coffee is a coffee or a coffee experience, and because of its restrictive attributes, it can result in a higher value in marketplace. So if we translate that, that means more attributes, more value. But different individuals value different things. We don't like citrusy coffee or fruity coffee or dark chocolate. I come from Greece, I like these coffees. Someone else from Japan might like completely different coffees. So the value of a specific coffee to me might be completely different from the value of this coffee to someone else. I might be willing to pay for a coffee that has this profile, descriptive profile, and those extrinsic attributes or certifications, and someone else might not be willing to pay the same value. So there is no unique truth of what is quality in coffee. So this is a representation, it's an example of how people might think about what they like in coffee. This is completely an example. Don't take it a picture and say, oh, this is what I say, it says that people like. But the important thing here is if we can measure an attribute, and the beauty about attributes is that you can quantify them and you can measure them, we can understand value. And we can use more tools that are objectives and also embrace the subjectivity of what we like. So last year at Portland, we presented the new coffee value assessment tool, which is a system that tries to figure out a new paradigm of how we discover value in coffee. And it's not very different from what the old SCA standard was in 2004. It's a system that kind of takes this old standard and updates it with what happened on the sensory science and try to actually embrace that diversity in coffee. Because we all know that we score coffees and we bring subjective things in. So what we said here, we have physical attributes that are completely objective. We have descriptive attributes, what we taste in coffee and at what intensity, and it's very objective, and it's based on the World Coffee Lexicon. that was developed with WCR and Texas A&M. Then we have the affective, how much we like something, how much a buyer likes something, because they project their consumers through their preference. And finally, extrinsic attributes. What else do we value in coffee? Who is the producer? How they harvest the coffee? How they process the coffee? What is the certifications this coffee might carry? Something which is not intrinsic to coffee, something that we need more information to understand. So practically, and Luis is going to speak more about CVA tomorrow at 2 p.m. at the cupping room, and he has a workshop where you're going to learn more about CVA and taste coffees with CVA. CVA is a holistic, high-resolution approach across those 4 assessments that I presented. What we are trying to do is to take that picture, give really details, and try to discover value on what we, as coffee professionals, as consumers, appreciate in the coffee that we have in our hand. So, this is a very simple tool. It's very measurable because it's very objective, and it recognizes value that is generated outside the coffee cup as well. So, I don't want to keep you longer. I was trying to be as concise as I can, and I want to say the following. If you ask me about trends, I would say that specialty coffee continues to grow and get market share from commodity coffee. Growth is heterogeneous and market dependent, and finally, it's driven by diverse interpretations of specialty coffee, including genetic, processes, flavors, recipes, and menus. And you can include all that on how much you value coffee with the new coffee value assessment tool. Thank you very much.